welcome back to the podcast, Going Against the Grain. I'm your host, Tyler Bridgewater, and it's been a long time. Yeah, it's been a long time. I think it's been about 2 months. Yeah. College, man. College and soccer. It's very draining, especially when you come back from injury. So, yeah, I'm back now. Should be back to uploading monthly now as I'm getting used to my college schedule and everything. But we left off on why I should vote part 1. If you haven't listened to it, I highly suggest you listen to it. It's really good. I talked about the executive branch, so like the president, vice president, cabinet. Also add some scriptures to show what God would say about voting for Christians. So highly suggest you go listen to that before you listen to this, because this will be part 2. We're going to be talking about Congress and then the workers of Congress, so you know why your vote counts and why you should vote on also Congress and not just on the executive branch, because Congress also has its own impact in its own unique way. So now we're getting to it. So Congress is made up of 2 houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives. The Senate is the upper chamber, and the House is known as the lower chamber. So we're going to start off with the lower chamber first, and we'll work our way up. So House of Representatives, there's 435 voting members, 6 non-voting members, and these 6 non-voting members are members that are from U.S. territories, so like America Samoa, U.S. Virgin Islands, and other territories of the U.S. that are not, explicitly in the U.S., but they are territories controlled by the U.S., basically controlled. So they have a say in, they have representation, but they're not allowed to vote. So they're there and watching what's going on. They're not allowed to vote, though. And the amount of representatives that each state in the United States have is based on how many congressional districts. So I know from Louisiana, I'll use that Louisiana, for example. I use it, for example, a lot of times because that's where I'm from, and that's what I know the most about on the state level. Louisiana has 6 congressional districts, so we have 6 representatives, and that's for every single state. This is how many congressional districts you have. That's how many representatives you have in the House. And each district has 1 representative, no more, no less. Each district has 1 representative. And they have no term limits, but they're up for a re-election every 2 years. So basically, that's their term limit. If they're not doing the job that you voted them in for, you can vote them out every 2 years. So let's say you vote them in 2022, it doesn't do what you want. In 2024, you can vote for somebody else and vote them out of office. So that's technically a term limit, but they don't have no set term limit. And some requirements to be a representative in the House is you have to be 25 years old, you have to be a U.S. citizen for at least the past 7 years, and you have to be a resident of the state that you represent at the time of election. So if I wasn't a resident of Louisiana and I wanted to run for a seat in Louisiana and the election was in, let's say, 2024, I would have to have moved in Louisiana by the election to be able to run for that seat. So even if you haven't lived there and you just moved there just to run for election, you technically could still run. I don't know how successful you'll be because the people don't really know you. You're not from there, but you can do it, apparently. And the seats in the House of Representatives are distributed among states based on the population gained from the census. And the census is done every 10 years. So the number of congressional districts you have can change every 10 years based on the census. So more people, more districts, more representatives for your state. And it doesn't matter the population of your state. Every state is entitled to have 1 representative. So if your state is small and only has 1 congressional district, or if they have none, they'll at least have 1 representative, no matter what. And also after the census that is done, states redraw district boundaries. So like that's how they have new congressional districts and more representatives. And usually this is done by either state legislature or redistricting commissions. And these redistricting commissions are nonpartisan, so not for any party or not drawing lines so a party has more representation in the House. So they use that so no manipulation can be used to make a district for the party. So like say for instance, Republicans are trying to draw a district where they know more people are Republican, and the way it's drawing now is doesn't vote Republican necessarily. They'll draw it so that it would be a Republican sitting there. So they do that so that can't happen, and the parties aren't using it to gain more power. But yeah, so that's why they use nonpartisan redistricting commissions most of the time rather than state legislatures, because if state legislatures controlled by Republicans, they might just try to make more districts that are represented by a Republican than the Democrats. So the nonpartisan redistricting commissions are way better to use in those situations. So, and it varies by state which one they use, but a lot of time they use the nonpartisan redistricting commissions. So now we're going to talk about the leadership in the House, the big man up top. It starts up, the head is the speaker, and the speaker is voted on by members of the House. So whoever you voted on into the House is voting on who the Speaker of the House is. And the Speaker of the House is whoever is picked from the people that are voted into the House. And then there are the majority leaders, which is the majority party. So the party that has the most representatives in the House is the majority party, and the one with the least is the minority party. So they have majority and minority leaders that are their representatives on the floor. So they just represent their party's interests on the floor. And then there's majority whips and minority whips, which assist in leadership on both sides. So majority whips for majority party, obviously, and the minority whip is for the minority party. So, and they also have party caucuses and or conference. It's just an organization or meeting of all party members of the House. And majority and minority party members meet in different caucuses to select their leaders. And yeah, in those meetings they select their leaders. So, and then there's also standing committees that have different legislative jurisdiction, and they consider bills or issues and recommend measures for consideration in the House based on the thing they have jurisdiction on. So, for example, the Committee on Education and Workforce, they're going to have jurisdiction over programs and agencies and activities in their jurisdiction, which is education and the workforce. So they'll have jurisdiction over like programs like Head Start. They'll have jurisdiction over different activities like pensions or health care for the workforce. And each of these committees have a chair from the majority party. I almost said minority. From the majority party, and they head the full committee, and the ranking member who leads minority party members in that committee. So there's a chair, and then there's the ranking member. So if you were to watch a committee hearing, you will see on the table in front of them a little name thing, and it'll say chair, and then for the minority party it'll say ranking member and then say their name. So like if you see that, that's what that means. And each of these committees' size and proportions are decided by party leaders, and the total number of committee slots are allotted to each party is about the same as the ratio of majority and minority members in the full floor. So let's say Republicans is ratio to Democrats is 2-1. That same ratio will be replicated in the committee for the committee size. So if it's 2-1 on the floor, it'll be 2-1 in the committee. So you keep the same ratio as on the floor for the committee. And sometimes they will have special or select committees. They call me though, or sometimes, but it's special or select, and they are formed to um, most of the time for investigation, but for any specific purpose for a short period of time. And they are an advisory body for like investigations and or policy related issues or to carry out administrative tasks. And they are usually created by law or by House resolution. And sometimes they even have private citizens that are members of these commissions. But mainly, they are members of the House, or it also could be a mix of both, like members of the House and private citizens in it. There are also some independent commissions within the legislative branch, and some are entities of the House or Congress. So that's about the jobs that the representatives in the House do. So they work on commissions, they're on committees, they make laws, obviously. Everyone knows that from growing up, learning about social studies and civics and all that. They also are your closest, besides your state representatives, closest representatives to you in the national stage. So, and some of their powers include they elect the president if no candidate in the presidential election gets to 270 votes, or if there's a tie, which is highly unlikely, then they elect the president. And they have the power to impeach federal officials, and they have the power to initiate revenue bills. So that's the House, and now we're going on to the Senate, which is the upper chamber of the House. Like I said, it's composed of 100 senators, which is 2 from each state. Fun fact about senators, before 1913, senators were elected by state legislatures instead of by direct election. And in 1913, with the ratification of the 17th Amendment, senators were able to be directly elected by the people of their state. So just felt like I should mention that because it shows like the privilege we have to be able to elect our senators, because a lot of people back then were not able to elect their senators. They would just have to hope the state legislature put the right person in that seat. So we're really privileged to be able to elect our senators that represent us on a national level in the high chamber of Congress. So the senators serve 6-year terms, which is staggered. So 1/3 of the Senate will be up for election every 2 years. So if you're elected in 2022 as a senator, I'll say from Louisiana, since that's my state, you're elected in 2022 as a senator from Louisiana. 2024, you're now up for re-election. 2026, you're now up for re-election. But in 2028, you'll be up for re-election. So you have 6 total years, and then you're up for re-election. So every 2 years, 1/3 of the Senate is up for re-election. So when you get voted in, there's another third that are in the election to keep their seat. So if you vote for them, you have 6 years of them. So this is even more so important than the House, because House, you at least have 2 years to judge how the job they did, and if you want to reelect them. Senators is 6 years. So you really got to think about who you're voting for in the senators, because they serve for longer. And the requirements to be a senator, you have to be 30 years old, be a U.S. citizen for at least 9 years, and be a resident of the state they represent. So I had to live in Louisiana to be a senator from Louisiana. You can't live in Mississippi and be a senator from Louisiana. Even if you were born in Louisiana and moved there, you still can't. You have to be a resident in the state. You can't be born from there and still represent them. You have to move back and become a resident. So they also have committees, just like in the House, where they draft, consider, and recommend legislation to the whole Senate. And they also use investigations and hearings to gather information on domestic and international problems in wherever that committee's jurisdiction is. And another fun fact is a low percent of bills considered by committees make the floor. So majority of the bills they look at in those committees in the Senate do not make the floor. So I just thought that was interesting and something I would share. But some of the powers they have, they confirm presidential appointments that require consent, like judicial appointments, or if a cabinet position that the president puts up there, they sometimes have to confirm that appointment. They also give advice and consent to ratify treaties, but thing that also goes along with that, the House also has to approve any treaties that involve foreign trade, and in the case there's a vacancy in the VP position, and the president appoints someone to be VP. So like if a VP was to die, and the president has to appoint someone to be VP, then the House must approve. They also try impeachment cases referred by the House. So the House impeaches and the Senate tries the case. So sort of like the judiciary body of the Congress, because they try the cases brought to them by the House for impeachment of federal officials. So now we're going to leadership. Leadership is vice president, the president pro tempore, because vice president is more so president of the Senate. It's more of a figurehead in the Senate. When they're not present, then the president pro tempore is basically president of the Senate. They also have majority leaders and minority leaders, like in the House, a majority whip, a minority whip, which is the same thing as in the House of Representatives. So Senate is basically does a lot of the same things that the House does, but it's a little bit of an upgrade, a little bit more than the House. So that's why it's the upper chamber in the House, and the House is the lower chamber of Congress. So that's the federal Congress, the U.S. Congress. And now I just want to give you an idea of what a state Congress would look like. Just to give you an example, I know Louisiana's Congress is not the same as somebody from Mississippi or Texas or Arkansas or Kansas, but I just want to use this for example to show you an example of a state Congress, and hopefully this encourages you to go look at your own Congress in your state, and so you know how that works, and you are also encouraged to vote for state congressmen in your own state if you're not from Louisiana. But if you are from Louisiana, then I'm going to talk about Louisiana's Congress. So Louisiana's Congress, both houses, Senate and the House of Representatives, have a term limit of 3 years, which is 12 years. So, no, term limit of 3 terms, which is 12 years. Sorry. So they are up for election every 4 years. So if you don't like the job they're doing, 4 years, you can vote them out. So just also, you got to make sure you're voting in the people you want to in there, because they have 4 years. 4 years is a long time of dealing with people that are not putting in the policies you want them to put in. So make sure it's very important that you vote in the people in these state jobs that you actually want to be in those state jobs, and not have to be stuck with somebody for 4 or 4+ years. So they have term limits of 3 terms, 4-year terms, which adds up or multiplies to 12 years. So they have 12 total years they are able to be in the House. But this is also consecutive. So if they serve 3 terms and they sit out a term, they could run again if they wanted to, which I don't know why they would, but they could if they wanted to. Some powers that both of them have, they can override the governor's veto with 2/3 vote. So governor vetoes a bill or whatever they pass in both houses. With 2/3 vote, they can get through. there's the sessions for the legislative branch is 60 for even number years and 45 for odd. So, and only monetary bills are considered in those odd number years. And so if it's 2022, there's 60 legislative days. If it's 2023, it's only 45, and only monetary bills are considered. And then some requirements, the requirement needs to be in both, not just one. Just this is for both. You have to be at least 18. You have to reside in the district for 1 year and must have lived in the state for 2 years and have to be a registered voter. So that's the requirements to be a Louisiana state representative or a state senator. So just like in the federal Congress, there are committees in both houses, and they have a chairman that leads the committee and then the vice chair, which is a little different from federal. Federal has ranking member and the chair, but they have committee and vice chair in Louisiana's Congress, which is the same. This is for both houses also. So now we are going to the House of Representatives, focus only on them. This is kind of short, so kind of just going through it. I'm just showing you, for example, the House of Representatives has 105 representatives, and like I said, their elections are every 4 years, and their leadership is Speaker, which is traditionally recommended by a governor, but it's not mandated by law, but it's just tradition that is recommended by the governor. And then there's a Speaker pro tempore, which is second in command basically in the House. And the House elects its clerk of the House and its chief clerical. I don't even know how to say that word, but so yeah, they elect the clerk of the House and its chief clerical. And they have the sole authority to impeach their officials and to introduce appropriation bills. So they're the only ones that have authority in Louisiana's Congress to impeach their officials and to introduce appropriations bills, which is money. Talking about money. So that's the House in Louisiana. Again, if you are not from Louisiana and you want to know how your state's House of Representatives looks, I encourage you to go search it up. You should. It should be easy to find for state government, but I encourage you to look and see and check out what type of things your Congress does, so you're more informed of why you should be voting and what you're actually voting for them to do. So now we're going to the Senate. Louisiana Senate has 39 senators, and some powers they have. They try state officials that are impeached by the House. So just like the federal Senate does, they do the same exact thing in Louisiana Senate, and they confirm or reject officials nominated by the governor. So they have the power to confirm or reject anybody that is nominated by the governor. So that's a check for the governor to make sure the governor doesn't get too powerful in the state. And the leadership of the Senate includes the president of the Senate, which is just like the Speaker of the House and the House of Representatives of Louisiana. It's traditionally recommended by the governor, but it's not mandated by law. So it's just tradition. And the second in command is President pro tempore. And there are also majority and minority leaders for each party, just like in the federal Senate. So there you have it. Just talked about the federal Congress and example of a state Congress in Louisiana. Again, sorry for the long time between uploads. I'm getting it together. I promise I'm getting it together. But now that I started with talking about why you should vote now, we're going to begin into some issues of today. As you know and I know, we're on the brink of an election in 2024, and my Louisiana people were on the brink of a governor's election in 2023, which have a bunch of issues that are big factors in these elections. So we're going to dive into some of those issues. So see where God will be on these issues. And again, as you listen to this, test it in the spirit. Don't just take it just because I say I'm Christian and a follower of Christ and I'm reading a Bible verse, because sometimes I might be wrong. I'm human. I'm not perfect. I'm not 100% right on everything. But just test the spirit. Make sure you're checking your word. Definitely challenge me if you feel like I'm not, how should I say it? If you feel like it's not necessarily right, I guess is the way to put it, or not being explained in a good way, because I like feedback, helps me to become better, and also keeps me in check. But yeah, we're going to continue putting God's word in politics. We're going to continue bringing the word into politics, because especially in these days of politics, the divisiveness and different issues that are losing truth in them, trying to bring that truth back and trying to make politics something that's not so divisive and more uniting than divisive. So thank y'all for listening. I know it was a long time between posts, but if you came back and listened again, I thank you for listening, and I hope to see you on the next episode.